So where to even begin? That's good coffee. So this video did not turn out the way that I thought it was going to. Let me explain. So previously I talked about how I had a show that I was performing, a solo show that I was performing down in Jackson, Mississippi. And during that trip, we were going to drive and along the way stop, meet other musicians, and I was going to also stop at antique shops to source goods for my vintage and pop culture store that I sell things online in. Everything was fine and dandy. It was going just like we planned. We drove down to St. Louis. The place we're staying at is right across from the baseball stadium. You can't really see the baseball field, but there's the stadium right there. So I was not aware of that. Busch Stadium? I don't follow baseball, but I know that it was a big stadium. I don't know, it was the Cardinals. So while we were there, we walked around and checked out some of the antique stores. Oddly enough, most of the places we checked out were record stores. There were several record stores along the way that we checked out. And for the most part, most of the antique stores on Antique Row were closed.
Actually, they've got a couple of books here. I may grab these.
We did go to one saxophone museum though, but it was strange because it felt like they didn't want us there. We walked in and they were like, "Can I help you?" And it was really strange. And then I was like, "We just came in to see the saxophones." And they're like, "Oh." And then they gave us a list of rules. Don't touch anything. Don't go in that room. All this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm a full grown man. I know how to behave in a museum. Anyway, it felt like they didn't want us there. So after checking out these stores, we went to an antique mall that was kind of further downtown, maybe like a 15-minute drive. Here we spent tons of time walking around, found a bunch of cool stuff, and that was the trip we had for that day. We even went back to the place and I recorded a video talking about some of the stuff I found and some of the things we did. 2 Mad magazines, they're vintage ones. Insert video here. It's like a cutaway segment from Family Guy. I just wait while it plays. The Sesame Street Fairy Tale album, also from the 70s, the New Zoo Review. Captain Furface, which I always want to say it in a different way. Shirley Temple's Fairyland, the Walt Disney Parade Fun Fact Fantasy Fiction Book Collection. Captain Cool and the Kongs, which is a Sid and Marty Krofft show for like a disco band. So we'll be hitting the road tomorrow to head to Jackson, and we'll be getting there a day before the show. So the reason we stopped at St. Louis was because it was halfway between home and Jackson, Mississippi. So we were doing 6 hours each. It was a 12-hour drive. And when we got down to Mississippi, to our second place that we were going to, my car broke down in the middle of nowhere. Not only in the middle of nowhere, but at a rest stop that was closed. So we pulled over at a rest stop. There's not a town for like an hour going either way. And we couldn't use the rest stop. We could have, you would think, like, heck with it, let's just go up there. No, there was a security guard there and told us basically, you can't use this. We're clearly stuck. We have to use the restroom, first of all. And we're trying to find a way to have someone come tow my car. And he comes down just to make sure we know you can't come up here. Is it like a drug den or something? Like, that was the weirdest thing. I mean, am I wrong? So what we did was then after that, we got towed to the nearest town, stayed overnight. I was just trying to figure out what to do with my car. It just stopped working. It was just the dash started blinking, all the digital displays started blinking, and I looked in the manual and all it told me was, that means something's wrong. Take it to a dealer to have them look at the computer. I know something's wrong. Clearly, I was trying to drive forward and all it did was jump and it wouldn't accelerate. Then it occurred to me, I've seen U-Hauls, which one can be driven out of state and to different towns and not need to be brought back. And two, I've seen them with car transports. I've seen people who move, want to bring their car with, but they just drag it along behind. So I'm like, brilliant, we'll do that just to get to Jackson and figure out what's happening. I was actually pretty proud of myself for thinking of that, because otherwise I was like, we are down south. What the heck are we gonna do? Also, Like I've said before, I have a tiny little Mitsubishi Mirage. Why did I think that it could literally drive all the way down to the bottom of the US and back up to the top? That's a lot of wear and tear on that little car. We got to a U-Haul the next day, and the only truck they had was a 24 foot. I don't know the size, but it was like a commercial truck. It was bigger than I expected. So on top of that being difficult to drive already, let's attach a trailer to the end with a car on it. So I was driving that just terrified the entire time. It was still 2 hours away from where we needed to go. Now it was the day of my solo performance that I was supposed to do, and that performance was in 4 hours, and it was a 2-hour drive to get there. So the person I was going down there to do the show with, Rhino, we pulled up in front of his place, and I immediately unloaded and started setting up, hooking up the gear, and getting ready for the live show. Now the setup is, Rhino has a live music stream that he does where he plays music, much like it's a music podcast, but kind of like a radio show where he plays the top 10 songs that the people in the chat picked that week, and then there's talking in between. So him and I chatted during this whole music segment, and that part was kind of fun.
We'll say one of our favorite jokes about the state of Mississippi is if you don't like the weather now, just wait till later. It'll be different.
Tell me if you've heard this one before. So I see the road signs driving down here, and it said, you know, basically coming up, Jackson Miss, the abbreviation, Jackson Miss. Unless, of course, I'm nasty. Then it's Miss Jackson. Is that? Have you not heard that joke before?
No, I have not.
Really? No. All right. Coined it here first, folks.
Then after that was done, he encouraged the people in the chat room to go over to the live video stream that we were going to be doing for the show. By the time we were done, I realized I had been up driving, then setting up for a show, then doing the radio show, then playing live. So we were tired. And my car, I still didn't have time to get checked out. Now, the problem is the next day, I also had to deliver the U-Haul that I brought there to exchange it for another one. I had to find another U-Haul and another trailer to drive us at least halfway back home, because I was not going to drive through that long distance in Mississippi again without getting my car checked. So that was what a good portion of my day was at that point. Now, what happened was I could have been documenting all this, but you know what? I was so upset, so frazzled, so much trying to solve this problem. The last thing I wanted to think about was like, okay, let's take a second and shoot a video. So I figured it would be more of a story time version of it that I would do at the end. I remember I was struggling with how I was going to do the comic for all this, and that's where this comes into play. I have been documenting what I was going through the entire time. While I couldn't draw, I was writing the script for my diary comic. So I have got pages of stuff that I'm going to be releasing as a comic very soon. So we finally found a U-Haul, and I made sure that they took me to a place where I was like, give me the smallest one that I can take out of town, which turned out to be a 10-foot. This was night and day. Like, if I would have gotten this originally, it still would have been cumbersome to drive it, but I was just like, I know exactly what I'm doing. Because it was just this tiny little, it wasn't even tiny, it's still a truck. I will say this, customer service for U-Haul was absolutely helpful the entire time. They accommodated me, they were very personable. At one point, when I returned it, I was having trouble returning it, and they called customer service to get the case number for my file, and they did it on speakerphone, and I recognized the person on support. And I was just like, I'm gonna make up a name, I forget what it is, but I was like, Kate, is that you? And they're like, Mr. Ray, is that you? How are you doing? They knew who I was right away. That was really cool. I really appreciated that. So we got all hooked up and drove back. Now, I still needed to get the car hooked up, but I wanted to get closer to home. We had to keep moving. I still had not had a chance to get my car looked at. We were no longer looking at antique stores. We were just trying to survive and make it home at this point. So we made it halfway to a hotel in Fairmont, Missouri. That next day, I looked up places to get the car looked at, and we ended up going to a Meineke. I had them look at the car, and they checked the computer on it, and basically they said, yeah, it said it had trouble shifting. And they said, otherwise everything else looks fine. They even took it out and they go, yeah, we can tell it has problems shifting. And I'm like, yeah, the car's always kind of done that. So really it was kind of just the computer or the car or the shifting just had a hiccup. But I, of course, said I was not going to drive it until I got it looked at. So from there, again, we were 6 hours away from home because it was the halfway point like last time. So I actually drove the car all the way back. But we did make it back. And the whole thing was just like, wow, that was an ordeal. I didn't get to do what I wanted to. The strangest thing happened. When I got home, in my inbox for my email, I had just been accepted to talk at a music conference in France for my concept of how my band shares our DAW files through GitHub. So don't know what I'm going to do about that yet, because we just had to spend a lot of money transporting a car. But I have an opportunity to go talk in France this June. So more on that later. But that's what happened. This video is much different. It was going to be more of a documentary style. But now it's more kind of story time. And I'm going to work on the comic for it. More of what happened in between what I just told you in the comic. So that's it for now. I'll talk to you next time.